afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for the Visual 3D Estimates webinar. I'm going to get right into the meat and potatoes today and go right into showing you how everything works. I'm going to skip over doing any kind of PowerPoint on who we are. We'll get to that at the end and stick around for that, but we'll be sending out information afterwards on that. I know your time is very valuable, so I want to get right into how do we do a visual takeoff and what is the purpose of it and what advantages of doing a visual takeoff are there. Right now you're looking at my screen of Envisioneer. We're going to be looking at bringing in a PDF today, tracing over top of it to create our visual takeoff. And as we're going through, I'm going to show you how it's taking the material off and what we can do with all of that information at the very end, not just for an estimate and going out to our point of sale system, but also sharing it with other key parts of our business and creating some value-added information that we share within our own corporation or we give out to the builders and the homeowners that might be coming in for that estimate themselves. So let's get started and show you how we bring the information in and what we do with that information. I'm going to come up here to the File pull-down menu, and I'm going to go to Import. When I bring in a file that I want to create an estimate from, there's a number of different formats that I can accept for that estimate. A PDF. You get the digital PDF file to do the basis of your estimate. Maybe you get an AutoCAD DWG or a DXF file to start off with, or worst case scenario, someone has given you something that was scanned in. They have a JPEG image that they're giving you. We can use any one of those. Or if you have someone that's bringing in just a napkin sketch, you can also use that by just typing in some information as well. So I'm going to show you the import PDF file format, but just know that if you do receive predominantly AutoCAD files or maybe JPEGs, the process of bringing it in is going to be the exact same. We're just using a PDF for today's example. So I'm going to hit Import PDF File, and then right out on my desktop, I have a PDF file. Now, when you bring in a PDF for the basis of your estimate, PDFs can be in two different formats, a raster or a vector. Basically, a raster PDF means that someone scanned it in. It wasn't started off in a CAD file. They maybe hand drew it and then digitized it and brought it in. And the way you can tell the difference between the two is the more you zoom in on a raster, see how it gets fuzzier and fuzzier the more I zoom in? It's because it's made of tiny little pixels to make up that drawing. If it started off as a CAD file and they made it into a PDF, that's a vector PDF. And right now I'm converting that raster image file to a vector one. So we've got nice, clean, crisp image. So the more I zoom in, the better it looks. The advantage of having the vector PDF is I'll be able to snap to those corners. But if you don't get the vector PDFs in, no worries. You'll be able to zoom in and pick points, and I'll show you how to do that in both manners. So just knowing that PDFs can come in two different formats, we can handle both of those and take advantage of the added information that a vector has. Your PDF might be multi-pages. All of the little tools you see here on the left-hand side are going to help us to make that PDF as accurate and as useful as possible. So I'll page through if it's a multi-page document to find the one PDF page that I want to bring in. We also have angle, so I could type in here that I want to rotate this down so that the base of it is at 270 degrees. Again, thinking about those really bad PDFs that you get in, that they might be off on a skew. Someone actually put it on a flatbed scanner and they made a PDF out of it. This little button right here, Pick Angle, will allow you to straighten that out. It'll allow you to pick 2 points and make that a 90-degree angle. So even if it's off on a horrible little skew, you can bring that right back down. Another thing to be very cautious of when you're doing your estimates is scale. It might be labeled as a 1/4 inch equals a foot, but we're all human. We make mistakes. Whoever designed and did the drawings might have just labeled it wrong. So before you even bring it in, you want to double check on that scale. So I'm going to zoom in on a known distance here. I've got a dimension, and I'm going to use this pick point button. This little pick scale button will allow me to pick 2 points. I'll pick from the start here, right to the end here, and then I type in the distance. And basically what it's going to do is kind of calibrate that drawing and bring it to the scale. So I'll click OK. If this scale had changed 1 to 48, a 1/4 inch equals a foot, then it would have told me what the scale is that it reads that at. But it is at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, so that scale remains the same. But it could change depending on what that actual scale is. You'll find that a lot of times when you're bringing in a PDF like the one on my screen that has multiple drawings on it, elevations, a roof plan, the floor plans, maybe the one floor plan you want to bring in is at a 1/4 inch and everything else is at an 1/8 inch, and that's why the recorded scale is 1/8 inch. That's when you really want to make sure you double check that scale. And again, for those PDFs that were scanned in, maybe they're skewed, maybe they're stretched out. We can scale it from horizontal and vertical positions, so you can bring it back into a non-skewed view as well. So lots of tools here to take in the information that you're bringing in and make it as good as possible because you're basing that estimate of it on it. So you want to make sure the scale is good, the angle is good, and that it's as crisp looking as possible. Beneath that, we have a crop box. I'm going to hit set here and just crop around what I want to bring in and what I want to leave behind. Why do I want to leave information behind? The more you bring in, the more lines that you're bringing in, those are more points that you could potentially be picking on. So I always want to just bring in just what I need. If you have multi-screens and you've got double monitors, sometimes I've been into training offices when I go to train, they've got triple monitors. Great setup. If you've got 2 monitors set up at your workstation, one can permanently have that PDF to the side. So if you have to review anything or look at it, you can always just zoom in on the PDF. But what we want to bring in as the basis of our estimate is just a simplified version of that. I also want to dim it down. This dimming percentage allows me to wash out that PDF. That's very helpful when you're bringing in the PDF. You don't want it to be vibrant on the screen, especially if you're going to be tracing over top of it, which we're going to be doing. So you can see what you've already done, and that washed out look will show what's existing, and then I'll have my highlighter over top of it of what I've already done. And I want it to make a very substantial distinguished look between the two, so I know what I've done and what I still have to do. So bringing in that PDF, all the tools here on the left-hand side are going to make it as intelligent as possible. And then all we have to do is hit insert in the lower right here, and a copy of that PDF attaches itself to my cursor, and I place it on my estimating screen. Now that it's here, I'm going to zoom in to make it big, just so that you can see that on the internet a little bit better when we're using the webinar. This is going to be the basis of my estimate. It's just a simplified 2D PDF. But all of the tools that I have up at the top here are going to allow me to take off different things. I can take off walls, doors, windows, punch openings into the walls to frame around them, put in some structural floors, finished floor materials, ceilings, roofs. We're going to go through all of those. I'm going to start off by estimating the wall. So I'm going to pick on the wall tool. Anytime I pick on any one of these elements that I want to do the takeoff of, you'll notice on the right-hand side of my screen is my catalog. These are elements that are in the catalog that I'm going to take off. So when I pick on walls, I see all different types of walls. I'm going to pick on the 2x6 cement board siding, element. That element, the 2x6 cement board siding wall, is going to give me my siding, my sheathing, my studs, If I punch holes into it, I'm going to be able to get all of my framing header material around it, my kings and my jacks. And I'm going to get my drywall on the inside, my trim, paint, anything that you take off is going to be assembled in that group called 2x6 cement board siding. I'm going to move my cursor out onto the drawing screen, and basically now all I have to do is track around the walls that I want to take off. I'm going to zoom in on one corner just to profile something for you. When I was bringing in and preparing that PDF to be brought into my estimating screen, I changed it over to a vector. So that means as I put my cursor close to these corners, see how they highlight blue? It's snapping to those corners. It's going to try to be as precise as possible and snap right to them so that I'm getting right to the precise corner of this PDF. If this had remained a raster PDF, the pixelated view, I can't snap to the corners, but I can zoom in and get as close to that edge as possible. So as I'm picking the points for this vector PDF, I'm going to make a choice that's not right on the corner, so I can show you how I can clean that up just as I would if it was a raster PDF instead. So here's the basis of the start of my estimate, this corner right here. I left click. And you can see a wall comes through there. I can also, with that, when I'm drawing this estimate, I can use that as a baseline. So I'm just going to do one single line and track around that outside edge. And I zoom out. Now all I have to do is move my cursor to each corner, and as I come to each corner, I'm just going to left click. See how my cursor's got that circle with an X in it? It's snapping to those corners. It's seeing those edges on that vector PDF. So I'm just coming around, picking on those corners. So after I've got those selected, I right click and I choose finish. It wants to know, what did I trace around? What part of that PDF is the basis of my estimate? Well, mine's the outer face of veneer. That's that outside corner I picked. But if the PDF you bring in is just a stud line drawing, you can use that. Or if it's a sheathing line, or you want it to be into the interior face, you can use any one of those outlines as the basis of that line that I drew. And then all I have to do is click OK, and it highlights the walls that are already part of my estimate. So just by making those simple clicks on the corners, I can already go up to Tools, Analyze, Generate a Project Estimate, and I'm just going to put this in a quote format. I already have my wall framing materials. I've got blocking halfway up that wall. I've got my framing nails, my plate material. I've got my sheathing, my studs, house wrap, sheathing tape, staples, and there's my siding and the nails, insulation, vapor barrier, staples for that vapor barrier, my drywall and the tape and the compound and the screws and primer for that, and I've already got baseboard trim and paint, all coming just from making those simple points and picking them. So a big question I always get when I do that is, how do you know that you needed 92 and 5/8 inch studs? How does it not know that it's a 10-foot wall or a 9-foot wall? How did it know it was an 8-foot wall and drawing on those studs? Let's take a look back out at the PDF we brought in. I'm going to come up here to Settings and Building Locations. Building locations are background settings that I created before bringing in that PDF that dictate the height of that wall. So it knows I'm drawing on the ground floor. That's down here in the left-hand corner of my screen as well. And as I started highlighting and picking those points for those walls, it put them in automatically at 8'1" and 1/8. When I go to punch a hole in the wall for a window or a door, it's going to hang that window and door at 6'8". And when I put ceilings in, it's going to go at 8 feet. So it had all of that background information in here to grab all of those heights for us. It also has this framing information. So if I click on my framing options, there's span tables. When I go to put in my openings, it'll refer to those span tables. So if you're typically working with maybe Bob the Builder, and Bob the Builder likes to frame out all of his headers with 2x10s up to a certain size, even if they're smaller, you can put that in the span table. You can have a separate span table for Bill the Builder, because he likes to go strictly by the building code, and he'll use 2 2x8s for a header, and then go up to the 2x10, and then use some LVLs. So all different span tables can be fed in depending on who you're working for at that time. This infill configuration tells me how to frame out that wall. So as I've got that green highlight going around, it's actually physically framing that wall at the same time as well, and filling it in with a double top plate, blocking halfway up, and my studs at 16 inches on center. These could be anything. We could handle pole barns as an example, or get into steel framing, lightweight gauge steel, or logs. All you have to tell it is describe the way you're framing that wall, save it in here as a typical, and it will use that. So I'm just going to change this to be just 16 inches on center with a double top plate, remove that blocking, click OK, and OK, and OK again to get out of there. And now in my material report, that blocking would all be removed. It's using that typical form of framing. If I click on one of the highlighted walls that I put in, and I look at its properties, this is where it's drawing out all of that other information. So it knows that it's a basic framed wall. And when it's set to be a framed wall, it grabs down here to the framing member to use. And it's using a 2x6 for my studs, my plate material through the wall. That 2x6, however, holds information about all of the purchased lengths. They'll be listed here with their corresponding SKU numbers. So as it was framing that wall, and it knew I had an 8-foot wall height, it came down the list and says, oh, well, I can use this 92 and 5/8 stud. Check, I'll use that for my studs. If the walls were 10 feet, it would come through this list and say, nope, too short, too short. I'm going to be using the 104 and 5/8 for my 9-foot walls or my 10-foot walls, depending on the height. As it goes through that list for plate material, you can see down here in the lower right of this dialog box that there's rules. This particular length can only be used for studs. That's my pre-cut stud material. This 10-foot board, it says not to be used for, never use it for blocking, never use it for plate material. So as I go through the list, I can see that my 16-foot board can be used for anything. So that's where I'm predominantly going to get my plate material. So you can set up all of these rules so it's shipping out the right lengths that you want to send out when they're framing out these walls. And again, it's going to correspond with your SKU numbers. So even the walls themselves are going to correlate back to all of your lumber, and it's going to look through the list and find the best piece of lumber that it can. When it's looking at that lumber as well, it also will use rules so that if I've got a 10-foot piece of material that I want to use, and I've got a 20-foot wall, it'll order 2. It won't order me 8-foot boards or 16-foot boards. It'll optimize it and know that the 10-foot board has less cuts and to ship that out instead of having too much waste. So there's waste factor rules in there as well. You can also see here trim. So as I was drawing that wall, trim is automatically associated. It's not something I have to go back and take off separately. It's here. I've got my baseboard, my pacing when I go to put in my openings. If there was crown, if there was chair rail, I can add those in as well. Those can be put on for individual walls and pieces of wall too. Right now, none of my walls have crown, but if I was to have crown in maybe a dining room, my living room area, I would pick on those walls, and those individual walls can have crown. But as a default, all of my walls just have baseboard. So at the end, that's in the list where I saw the linear footage of baseboard that I'm going to require. This quantity tab at the very end is where we assemble all of the various materials that we need for that 2x6 cement board siding wall. So think of this wall as just a group that's housing all of these separate materials. So these are all separate little shopping carts that I need to bring in every time I draw this wall. So I've got my siding, my nails, my OSB sheathing, my house wrap, the tape, the drywall. So if at your yard you never quantify drywall, it doesn't have to be here. You can click on this and delete it out, or never put it in the first place. All of these catalogs of materials can be customized, changed around, so it's only calling out the materials that you want to quantify. But again, if you got the drywall, You might not be supplying it, but you could be good friends with the drywall supplier, and you could give them all of that information as well. Hey, I just did a takeoff. You're going to be needing, 32 4x8 sheets of drywall. You've got the information there. At the very bottom, we also have common measurements. We have back checking. You want to make sure that these quantities are right, especially if you start changing and tweaking some of these formulas. These formulas are yours to be able to go in and add waste factors onto them or change their values so it better suits your office. So you want to make sure that when you start, if you do start tweaking some of these values, double check them with those common measurements. You know the full interior wall area, exterior wall area, their lengths. Just do a double check on any tweaking that you might do. So all of these formulas can be updated and tweaked. You have the full power there to do all of that. I'm just going to hit cancel there. So now you see where all the values come from as I'm drawing those walls. I'm going to grab onto a interior wall. And then all I have to do is show where the interior walls start and stop just by left clicking again. And as I'm going through, you can see that these interior walls have a different color than the exterior walls. If I grab a 2x4 interior non-load bearing wall and draw it as well, you can see that it's another color too. So as I'm drawing these walls, I'm visually seeing just by the colors themselves what the different materials are. So if I have a wall that has type X drywall, or I have tile attached to it, or it has some different material, you can distinguish that by a different color. So visually you're looking at it and know that that blue wall is a 2x4 stud wall with drywall both sides. The green interior walls are 2x6s. And this darker green also includes siding. All of them can have different colors. You can tweak and adjust those colors as well. We've just standardized the database here, but this is all of yours to customize as you need to as well. When I start going through and putting in doors and windows into here, all I'm doing is placing them in. As I'm placing them in, if you're actually reading a set of dimensions, you can use those to your advantage as well. So you've got your PDF on the other screen. I know this is maybe a 6 inches or a foot away from that corner. I can right click and say, I want to offset this door to be 6 inches away from the corner. And as I put it in, it's going to be exactly 6 inches away from that corner as I place it in. So you can take advantage of that to get things exactly where you want to do, or if this is just a quick takeoff, doesn't matter where that door is, left click, place it in, it's going to get the header around it. It doesn't have to be exactly where it is on the PDF. So you could go through, place in all of your interior, exterior doors just by placing in where they are, and it'll create that door added into the material list and also frame around it as well. Windows, exact same thing. All you're doing is coming through, grabbing the window size that you need from the catalog, and lots of different sizes here. They can be fully customized as well. So if you are carrying a certain brand and you want to see them in, those can be quickly added into the catalog as well so that you're using the exact SKU numbers and brands that you need to as well. The big thing with all of this is I'm putting it through. I'm going to pop this into a 3D view. You can visually see everything about the takeoff as well in a 3D view. I can see the wall. I can see the doors and the windows going through. I can see my trim. So I know I'm not forgetting anything because I can see it. I can also view framing, display the framing, and take a look at that framing as well. Is there anything I'm forgetting? Taking a double look at your PDF or any framing diagrams that came through or header tables. Perhaps deviating away from the span tables that are there, for whatever reason, there's a point load coming on top of this front door, and you need to beef up that header. The plans call for it. It's an LVL header over top of that door. How do I change just that one opening where everything else I want it to follow that span table? Well, I can come up here to View, Framing Mode On, Off, and it washes the entire plan, showing that the orange here are load-bearing walls, the green are non-load-bearing walls, The rose color are our openings, and the blue is how I frame my corners. So I could pick on that one opening, right-click on it, and take a look at its properties. And right now it's telling me I'm referring to the infill. I'm referring to those rules that you set, and I'm framing around that opening as the table tells me to. So you could say, I need to use a custom head fill jam configuration for this particular opening. And I'll hit select configuration. That brings me in to take a look at all different ways that I can frame around the openings. And you get that nice little diagram below so you can visualize and see it on how you're going to frame around those openings. So I'll just pick a 9.5-inch PSL header and click OK and OK. And if I go out of framing mode here and look at my framing again, you can see that it's got the PSL header over top of that one opening. That's the same for the walls as well. Coming over here to view framing mode on off. If this is ultimately going to be 2 kitchen walls and I know they're going to be lagging the cabinets into that wall, I might want to add a couple of rows of blocking along that wall. So looking at the properties, I'm going to tell it I don't want to refer to the rules set for this location. I want to use a custom infill. And when I come to my custom infill, I'm going to look at the blocked wall, and I'm going to even add a brand new configuration on that, saying with the blocking for this one, I'm going to straighten that out so that the wall itself is on the blocking is on the flat, and I'm not going to stagger it. Click that to no. I'm going to put that initial offset at 3 feet, and then the next one is up at 7 feet. So I've got that legged in, and I'm going to go call it blocked for cabinets. Click OK, and OK, and OK again to get out of there. And then there'll be blocking along here. I'll show you that by getting out of that framing mode and getting back into framing. So even if you're doing something that doesn't follow the rules, it's not overly dramatic on how you're going to change that. It's just a quick point to the walls you need to change and edit how they're being framed or the openings are being framed. You're not leaving anything behind. You're not forgetting anything because visually you can see what's going on and be able to handle that. I'm going to put this down into 2D. When I put this down into 2D, you can see how you can still see all of the framing members and a whole bunch of little tags start to appear. Each one of these walls can be broken down into individual wall panel diagrams that you can add. So these diagrams that are in here show you how each individual wall is being framed. This is great value-added information that you can provide to your builders, especially if they're trying to train a whole new team of framing crews on site. They've got Nelson Newboy there who's never framed before. He needs to learn and understand how to frame. How better than showing him an individual diagram? Or how better to show how you're actually using these different pieces of lumber. I'm going to insert this one panel to show you all the information that goes behind them as well. So I'm going to click on this panel, and that one little wall piece here, each member that's in there, each piece of lumber that went into this wall is labeled. You can see the A, B, C's, H's, G's, and E's. And if I scroll down here, so it'll give you an elevational view and then a plan view of where each member is, and then a description. So these A's are studs. They're 2x6 studs. There's 12 of them, and they need to be cut down to this length. So lots of great information for you to share with the builder so that he can see everything that's needed on site and where you're getting your material counts from, and hand it to that brand new framer to say, this is exactly how you're going to frame out that wall. So just a nice piece of value-added information that isn't any more work for you. It's just there for you to use. I'm just going to go up to View, Framing, Display All but the Framing to hide all of that noise again and bring us back down to the simplified view. So we've got the walls in. We've got all the framing information behind them. We can even put in just simple openings in the wall as well. So if you don't supply the windows and doors, but still need to cut that hole for openings, just put them in as an opening. And that opening will do the exact same thing. It'll also case around them as well, following the rules of the trim that we set for the individual walls. Moving along our estimating tools, I always start by just kind of coming along and gradually making my way through the tools. I come to floors. Catalog panel shows prepackaged floors as well. These floors will include the subfloor, the rim and band joists, the joists themselves, and a sill plate if you wanted it to as well. All you have to do is pick the package that you want. So if I pick on these TJIs as an example, it gives me all the information that's being included. So the general properties of this floor is that the joists themselves are going to go in the 90-degree direction, meaning up and down on my screen. If I change that to 0, they're going left to right. They're 16 inches apart, the spacing. And this joist of bearing, I'm going to profile this a little bit as well once we get this floor in. It means when I come up to a beam, how do I handle the joist? Are they going to be overlapping, staggering over top of the beam? And if they are overlapping, staggering at the beam, by how much? I've got a foot here. If you're using hangers, you would hold back at that beam, and instead of using stagger, so they're not going to overlap. So we're going to use stagger just to show you that. I have my sheathing material. You can see here when I'm specifying the materials, it's also got quantity information below that. Floor system, subfloor. What that does is when these materials start to appear in my list, disorganize them. So it's not just a sloppy list of all the materials that went into the model, but they're actually being organized into shiploads, phases. So these pieces of sheathing are going into my floor system shipload, and they're going to be labeled as subfloor. Whereas I go to my joists, going to the same shipload floor systems, but they'll be labeled, of course, as floor joists. And onward throughout this list, you can see all of the different pieces of material. The sill plate, I'm shipping out with my foundation construction, and it's going to be labeled as sill plate. So everything can go into its own separate shipload phase of construction, so they arrive on site correctly for you. So this is how we're organizing that list, and that organization, I'll show you later as well, can also be sent out to your point of sale system. So when you open this up in BizTrack, Spruce, any product that you're using for your point of sale, it'll all be organized correctly for you as well. So I'm just going to click OK here, and then move my cursor inside the walls that I created as the exterior. You can see it highlights. So all I have to do is left click once, and it'll put the joist in. I have them automatically hidden from view, but I will hide them here by going to floors and opening up the eye for my structural floor framing, so I can actually see those joists running through. Now that they're in, let me show you how I can stagger them. So I'm just going to select that floor. I'm going to right click and say, with that structural floor, I'm going to insert a bearing line. So from this point right here to right here, the joists are going to bear. See, they automatically overlap. So again, that was just right clicking, telling it the structural floor, there's a bearing line. And that bearing line, left click to show where it starts, left click to show where it stops, and they'll automatically overlap those floor joists because I told it that's what I wanted them to do. So very quickly, you'll get all the lengths as well. So if we recap so far on what we've done and look at that project estimate, we'll now see that we've got different material coming through. Now on that foundation construction phase or shipload, now we're starting to see our sill plate material. We see our eye joists, our rim board, our subfloor, adhesive, and then we've got our wall framing information going through, but added into that now is all of our header material. And we've got our cripple studs above the openings, and we've got that blocking on just those two walls that we needed. We also have our studs. Now, I've got the jack studs here, and I've got them labeled separately. But as far as the king studs, I've labeled them as just a stud and to use the stud material. But if you wanted them to be labeled out separately, you could call them out and refer to them as king studs, and they will appear on that list that way as well. We can see our doors and our windows going in the list, and added in with the door, automatically it gave me a lock set and a deadbolt. because I assembled those materials and attached them to the doors. So every time I inserted a door, it gives me that extra material. Think of that when you're creating your windows and doors. So if you want to throw in a bundle, you can throw in any kind of bundles that you need for other materials that you're going to be using every time you frame out those windows and doors. You might want to throw in a bundle as well so that they have those in there and they can use all of that shim material that they're going to need too. So all of that gets added into the list just by making our way across the top here. Ceilings. The ceilings themselves can go in by room. So if we're framing one room as a tray and another as a flat, you'd want to do them all as individual rooms because it can frame around those trays in cathedrals and vaults as you need to as well. But if it's all one flat ceiling and you just want to be able to get the drywall off, you can do ceiling by perimeter and say just unframed half-inch drywall, place it in the middle there, and it will just give you the drywall. But again, for individual ceilings that might need to be framed, choose your framing material. I'll do 2x6 framing, and then go to the individual rooms, frame those out, and put those in. Now, I'm going to go to a 2D designer's view, another different view. This hides all of the framing views and gives me a kind of a top-down bird's eye view, so I can see those ceilings. So if I do need to manipulate a ceiling, if I do have a tray, all I have to do is pick on that one ceiling, right-click, look at its properties, and say this ceiling is trayed. And I can give it all of the values. So if this is coming up straight 90 instead of 45, I could change that. The tray height here, the B, I can change the height. We try to give everything as many diagrams in these dialog boxes as possible. So in your own office, if you're training someone on estimating and they don't understand what you mean by the tray height, well, here you go. Here's the values. Plug them in where you need to go. So with everything in our software, we try to keep it as simplistic as possible. Go pick the tool that you need, walls. Go to the catalog, left click to insert a wall. Pick a door. Door show up in the catalog, left click to place the door in. All of them are driven the exact same way. There's not a lot of dialog boxes popping up. There's not a lot of information to be fed in. It's all pre-done, and you just have to left click and place it in. But when you do need to customize, as we've shown you, you can go in and change everything as you need to if something doesn't follow the rules, or you need to tweak a formula because you want to add in a bigger waste factor on that drywall, you can do so. So this little ceiling here is now trayed. So if we pop this into a 3D view, we can see that. And if we go into framing, display the framing, you can see that it's, I'm going to put this into a rendered outline, might be a little easier for you to see. It's framing around that tray for you as well. We see the ceiling joist going in there. We see all of our wall framing, the headers, all can visually be seen. So there's less chance for anything to be forgotten in the list as you're making them. View, framing, display all but the framing, we can see the finished materials. Put that back down into 2D. Let's move ahead and go into roofs. Now I just have to pick the material I want. I want a hip roof with shingles. Move my cursor inside again, left click, and it will put a hip roof on. Again, I'm going to simplify this view so you can see the roof a little bit better. You can always come in here and just hide the visibility of different things as you need to. So I'm going to just hide that PDF and the floors and the ceilings for a moment so it's easier to see that roof. Just, it's not taking it out of my estimate. They will still estimate. I'm just hiding them for clarity when I'm looking. Now that I have that 812 hip in, if I click on one piece of that overhang, that dashed line, see how arrows appear? Each one of those arrows is pointing to the separate roof surfaces that make up that roof. Each one of those holds information about pitch, plate height, and style. So if I'm working on an elaborate roof, multiple pitches, multiple plate heights, all different styles mashed in together, this is how you achieve it. Clicking on the arrows will turn them green. Green means I want to change them. I don't want these two green arrows that I've selected to be an 812 hip. I want them to either have a different plate height, I want them to be a different style, or I want them to have a different slope. And by looking at their properties, it'll bring up the dialog box just about these two sides. All of those other red arrows are going to retain an 8/12 hip. So in here, I can say those left to right slopes are just going to be a 6 and 12. And they're actually a 2-foot overhang instead of a 16-inch. And instead of being a hip, I want them to be a gable or a mansard or a Dutch hip. Custom allows multiple slopes up one side. So if you have a gambrel style roof, multiple pitches working its way up, you can achieve that using custom here. Or if you're having an arch, a nice arched eyebrow dormer, you can create that. Or a double slope, maybe it's 8 and 12 and then it's going to die off into a 4 and 12 over a shed portion of the porch roof. All of those can be done. So I'll just pick on gable and click OK. And then it'll just run that ridge left to right, and now they're gables. So each side can be customized depending on the style that you're looking to achieve in that roof. Now that you have that roof on, this particular roof I put on, if I can put this into a 3D view and go into framing, is done with rafters. But what if you use trusses? File, export it out, and send it off so that those trusses can be manufactured. The true power of having a 3D visual takeoff is be able to share this information as well. Not just being able to visualize it so you don't forget anything, but seeing this 3D model, sharing it out. So if you're using Weyerhaeuser Javelin to get your floor joists, engineered floor joists, send this out to Javelin. If you're using CSD or MyTech for your trusses, send that model out. They're going to open it up in Sapphire or Javelin. They're going to see the same 3D model. It doesn't have to be redrawn. All they do is open it up, it analyzes the model, and they can place the trusses in right on top of it. And that's the same for Boise, BC Framer as well, or getting into Keymark and Simpson too. You'll also see at the bottom of the list, 2020 Kitchen Designer. So if you also have a design center, an interior design group, and they're using 2020, save them some time. You've already drawn the model. We can export it out to them. They can open it up in 2020. So they don't have to redraw the walls, the ceilings, the windows and doors. They'll all be there. That also saves on any mistakes that might happen as they're laying out that kitchen. If they move the window or the door when they're coming out in that concept, maybe cabinets won't fit, but you've placed them in, you're saving them time, and you're giving them some accuracy as well. And not only can we send that model out to 2020, but once they're done that kitchen, we can bring it right back in again. So that you've got that full 3D model you could do a full virtual tour on and include the kitchen cabinetry. And because the kitchen cabinetry is in here, it's going to be part of your material list as well. So it's all going to be fed out into your materials. So share that model. That's a big key point. I brought it up because we were looking at the roof and thinking about the trusses if you've got your own truss plant. But if you're also just supplying the rafters, well, we can do that too. And that can be all part of your list. I'm going to draw your attention here to this gable wall. So right now, that wall is balloon framing all the way up. But if you have a gable end truss or you've got framed gable ends, we can handle that as well. So I'm just going to get this out of framing view for a minute. And I'm going to click on the walls that make up this end here. And I'm going to look at their properties. It automatically balloon framed those up because I told them automatically to expand. So if I had changed it simply to a 10-foot plate height, the walls would have grown underneath that roof to a 10-foot plate height. They automatically extend to match the roof. So change the roof, the walls will grow. So the walls automatically grew under this gable end to balloon frame underneath it. But I'm going to tell them, don't do that. Stop the walls at an 8-foot plate height, and then we're going to put a gable end wall framed on top of it. And this is how you'd also achieve sloped walls. So think of your stairwell walls. You can automatically slope them to any size as well. You tell them what's the height at one end of the wall, the other end of the wall, and it will slope them. That will change your framing. That will change your drywall counts. You can also step it. So if the wall is going to be stepped underneath those stairs, again, step it. Changes your drywall, changes your framing materials as well. But we'll just leave this at a level, and I'll click OK. And now we got a hole in the wall, and all I have to do is click on that side of the roof right here, looking at its properties. When I changed this to gable, it added this display gable parameter. Display gable means underneath the gable portion of the roof, how do you want to display that gable wall? Do you want it to be nothing there because you're going to balloon frame up like we've had previously? Do you want a surface there? So do you have a gable end truss and you just have to lag on the finished materials? Or do you want to build a gable end wall? And I'm going to tell it to build a gable end wall, and we'll use that same type of siding, so our cement board siding, and click OK, and it builds a gable end wall in there. So if I look at our framing, it's all going to be framed up there using that method as well. So there's nothing that you can't customize, and it's like you're building it, and because you're building it, it's counting it. So you tell it exactly how you want to build that, it will follow that rule, and it will put that all through to your materials as well. So we have the value-added information of being able to share it out with all of these different software packages. We can share it out as a wall panel as a value add. And because it's a 3D model, Envisioneer also gets into, you could create photorealistic renderings. You can create VR experiences if you have a design center as well. You could even send 360 shots out to a smartphone using an app. So if they want to see what it looks like in the kitchen, bring them in the kitchen and do a 360 shot and send it to their smartphone. That smartphone app is also very handy for framing on site. It doesn't have to be finished materials that you're sending out as a rendered image or as a 360 to a smartphone. Think of it as a framed view. You've got a wall, maybe it's a cathedral wall, framed. They're not understanding how to do that on site. Send them that 360. Show them how you got the materials and how you framed it in the software to send out those materials and allow them to see that on site. Excuse me. We also, when we're analyzing the model, can do an energy audit on it. We can send all of the information out to ResCheck. In a lot of different states, you now need to get an energy audit done on the home on its energy efficiency. And ResCheck is the software produced by the US government to be able to do that audit. We export directly out to ResCheck. So as you're doing this 3D model, it can send it right directly out to ResCheck. You don't have to hand key in the information in ResCheck. It does it automatically for you. ResCheck is almost like a spreadsheet of information you have to fill out about every wall, every door, every window, and their U factors and R values. Because we're also retaining that information per wall and window, we're sending that out as well. A lot less work. And what a great value add you can propose to your builders. Not only am I going to give you a material list, but here's the information you can send right up to ResCheck as well. And then when we're analyzing it, I'm going to hit Generate Quote. Now we want to send all of this information out to your point of sale system. How do we organize this information and get it sent out? Well, I'm going to bring it in here to Quote Generator. And here in Quote Generator, it's again like that project estimate view that I had shown you earlier, but it's more in a spreadsheet type of look. I can key in different pricing I can bring in from the point of sale system, or I can send this out. And as I'm looking through different items, I can remove items that I don't want to send out to my point of sale system as well. So I'm just going to go to the bottom. We've got those general measurements. I can just highlight them in my list here and say, delete those out. I don't want those items to come over to my point of sale system. They won't know what to do with it. It's not directly tied to a product. They're just general back checking measurements. Delete them. I could also, though, substitute them for an actual product. So if there's other products, so as an example, think of the trim. I just had MDF baseboard in. Here, I could substitute that MDF for oak or any other material, any other SKU number I wanted it to be, so I can, double check and do a different price on that. So if I wanted to do a secondary pricing on something, I can do that. I'm going to delete out those items. All of that can be published into just a simple report. So this is just a simple report you can send out to the yard, or if you wanted to use this for your quoting purposes, this can be sent out to the quote as well, so that all of this information appears in a nice spreadsheet look that you can give to, again, to your builder or out into the yard as well. So it's not just a spreadsheet look, but an actual nice looking quote that you're giving them. And you can uncheck items that you don't want to include. So say I was sending this off to my door guy. I'm going to uncheck everything but my doors, regenerate the report, and then he's going to have a look at just the doors that I'm sending him. Okay, so that's the report you can give to them. Or file, export, and tell it what point of sale system you're using. Are you using Activent? Are you using Advantage, BizTrack, Cashier Pro, Eagle, Falcon, Lumber One, Ponderosa, Peachtree, Profit Master? You can see we've got all of the point of sale systems in here, depending on the one you want to use. And what we do with that is we put the information in a format that it could read. So we're just reformatting the information on the screen so that it can be read by BizTrack or Spruce or Eagle or Falcon. And then these category names still appear, or you can tell them to take that off. So right now I've got the maintain quote order, but I could tell it not to as well. Display the group headers and totals. I can uncheck that if I do maintain the quote order and get rid of those as well. And then I just hit export, and it sends out that information. I would have to have an account ID to BizTrack. I'll just put something in there for now because I don't have one. And you can bring them in as an order or quote. Predominantly people are bringing them in as quotes. You don't want it to be a full order yet. Bring it in as quote, review it, and add anything else you need to, and go from there. So I'll say it's a quote, click OK, and it's gone. And then you can open that up into BizTrack or to Spruce or whatever you're using. So kind of a full circle estimating software that gives you so much more. It gives you the ability to send that information out and share it with your design centers. Bring it back and create really awesome visuals, both photorealistic renderings and 360 views and VR experiences. Or sending it out just for quoting purposes. You have a truss plant. You want to send that out to MyTech. Or maybe you don't have a truss plant, but you also are going to be ordering the trusses on behalf of. You can send that out and save everybody some time. I have crammed through a lot of information in just an hour. I know it's a lot. So I want to kind of do a pause and check in with any questions that anyone might have about anything that we've covered or that I haven't covered and that you might have questions on. In the GoToMeeting console, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat portion there. So you can type in any questions that you might have, and I'll be able to answer those for you during the last few moments of our presentation. Following the presentation, I did record it. We will be putting it up onto our YouTube channel, and I'll be sending a link out to you so that you can review it again. So if everyone in your estimating team didn't have a chance to see today's presentation, I know you're also busy and I really appreciate you coming, you can share that YouTube video with them and watch it again. We also do customized presentations. So if you did want to assemble a team together and you have very specific questions, contact us and we can prepare a presentation for your company. We'll do it the exact same format using GoToMeeting. And then you have a live version where you can interact and ask questions as we go through on your point of sale system, how you're using it with maybe MyTech or Warehouser, and understand everything that's going into these estimates and how do I edit these formulas and how do I customize that framing to suit your needs, we can do those customized presentations as well. So let me just double check to make sure I'm not missing anyone's questions. And there aren't any yet, but please don't hesitate to ask any. I know I covered a lot of information. So while we're waiting for questions, I am going to put in up our PowerPoint here so that I can go over just some simple information for you. So I always like to end off by saying, well, why automate? Why use a 3D model throughout the entire process? Well, think of if you have a design center, an interior design group, a kitchen center, think about the sales and marketing and how they can engage the client by having that 3D model. You've already drawn it for your estimate, share it with them, bring it back, and they can see what their kitchen is going to look like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It can do a full sun study as well. You tell it where you are in the world, what time of day, and it will cast those shades and shadows. Great for your decor center. Do they really want those materials? Is that the paint color and the tile that I want with that flooring? Maybe not. Show them different iterations. You can always do those upsells. That tile looks great, but look at this tile. Doesn't that look better because it's a 3D model? Get those quotes. We brought that into our quote generator. It had the list of materials. I can substitute items. Yes, we quoted you at MDF baseboard, but I'm just going to substitute a quick here. So if you want to upgrade that trim, this is what it's going to cost. It also does full working drawings. I didn't get into that. It's another full webinar that we do. We'll be doing that one next month. But because we have that CAD drawing, it does full elevation sections, details, dimensioning, text. So if you do a plan shop as well as part of your yard, this can handle all of your permit drawings as well. And then send that out to engineering. I showed you how to export it out to Javelin and Sapphire. You can do that. Link it to your point of sale system. We can bring in your customized SKU numbers. All you have to do is get a dump of information from your point of sale system, and we have a service that'll customize that catalog so that when you're picking the wall or the roof or the floors, it's picking your exact SKU numbers and then sending out that bill of materials out to the yard. And you could even supply that full 3D model to the homeowner, either in the 360 app or giving them a copy of Envisioneer. We have a homeowner version, $99 version, so they can have their own 3D model as well. Great kind of thank you gift if you do the full circle sales, marketing, decor center, drawing, plan, permit, and estimating. It's a great little thank you at the very end for the homeowner as well. I'm going to just end off then without any questions from anyone. Oh, I've got one coming up here. Let me just get to that question. How do you address multi-stud pack walls? For example, a double or a triple 2x6. So I'm thinking like a marriage wall when you're dealing with multifamily, if that's what you're speaking of. When we're designing those walls, we would just do a double wall in that area and handle those through there. But if it's just a framing configuration that you're showing them. So let me get back into Envisioneer here. So the question, as I understand it, doing a double stud wall. So like a marriage wall in a multifamily. With these walls themselves, when we're looking at the configurations, those configurations can have multiple studs going through them as well. So if I come back up here to our building locations and looking at our framing options, when we're doing these walls, we can have copy the studs here, and the second row of studs that I'm having, I'm going to offset them along the wall. Let's say here by 5.5 inches, it's a 2x6 wall. So you can see how I can get double studs going through there. And along the wall itself, and then front to back, I can say that, pop that out 5.5 inches as well. So we can have like a double stud wall coming through. And I would do the same for plate material and just double studding those all out. So if it's a marriage wall, you can draw it as one wall, or you can even just duplicate the wall so you can have double information going through there. I'm thinking that's what you're meaning along that wall, but I'm just going to double check and see if you've clarified that for me. In a single wall. So I hope I showed you that in a single wall, how you can have that double. Also, is it possible to frame the ceiling in a more practical way for span load concerns? Absolutely. So when you're framing the ceilings, it's just the same as I did with those joists for the floors. So if I want them to go 90 degrees instead of front to back, those can be spanned in any span that you want them to be. They can stop at your load-bearing walls. Think of it the same as when I was framing out those floors. We can rotate the framing so it's going in a different direction. We can stop them at different walls if you need to as well. So yeah, no problems there. And I'm just making sure I've got everything answered here. When you put the ceilings in and then show the framing, notice that the ceiling joists were running longer than practical. Oh, okay, and I think I just answered that one. Same question, somebody else. For the span. And, yeah, perfect. Multi-studs, we handle that. Single wall, frame the ceilings. Okay, looks like we've answered everyone's questions. So I'm just going to pop back into our PowerPoint here, and I have our contact information on the screen. So if you do have further questions, I'm sure they're going to pop up as soon as we end off the webinar. You're going to think of something. If that does happen, don't hesitate to contact us at the details you see here. We can answer your questions by email or by phone. We can set up secondary webinars for your staff. Anything that you need to know, never hesitate to reach out. We've got lots of different training webinars that we do. My job here at CADSoft is I oversee the training and support center. So if you have questions about classes, setting up customized catalogs, next videos that you might want to see, we've got a whole website of various videos that you can view as well. We can send you all of that information as well. In the meantime, if you do want to visit our website is www.cadsoft.com. And on our website, you will see lots of information. You'll see we do have an LBM supplier information if you scroll down, and that'll give you all different information on what to look for in Envisioneer, specifically for lumberyards. You can see our VR and image gallery from there. You can see pricing information there, and even download a trial. The trial that you're downloading is a full working copy of our software. It gives you 30 days to kind of test drive it yourself and see what you can do. The only thing you can't do is export out in different formats and print. But otherwise, you have full capabilities of doing everything I did today. You just won't be able to export it out to quote generator and out to your point of sale system, or be able to print anything off. But otherwise, it gives you a really good opportunity to see if this is something that's good for you in your office. So I want to thank everyone for joining me today for the discussion on virtual estimating, 3D estimates, and how they can be useful and how you can use all of that information. If you're bringing information in to do the estimate, you might as well share it. Send it out to the trust plant, send it out to your kitchen designers, send it out to ResCheck so that you can get that energy audit or create those panel diagrams for value add. Again, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.